Hey everyone, welcome back. I don't usually make snapshot videos, generally because I'm too lazy to release a video within the 2 to 3 day window before the topic becomes immediately irrelevant. But this time I'm making a video because Mojang messed up big time when they introduced the new resin mechanics, because these are way too easy to get large amounts of. If you're totally out of the loop, they added a bunch of stuff, but I'm not going to waste your time with a complete snapshot overview. I'm sure there's 1,000 people who can make that. I'll fill you in on the most important thing they added. They added the ability to obtain resin by punching creakings, which then spawns around the creaking heart, and this can be used to make a variety of beans-themed building blocks, but most importantly, it can be used to make creaking hearts, which were traditionally only able to be obtained in creative mode. Now, the reason this is a massive deal is because the creaking actually has some insane applications in Redstone, specifically because now we have an ability to detect where the player is looking. If you want to see some insane demonstrations of what that kind of eye tracking can do, head over to my friend's channel. They've got a bunch of projects related to that. But the issue with this kind of stuff is that since the creaking heart could only spawn within Pale Gardens and couldn't be moved outside of those Pale Gardens, it was kind of useless. But now we can build these devices essentially anywhere. But I'm actually not too interested in talking about that. Today I just want to mass produce as much of this new resource as possible, so let's get right into that. And this might seem like a weird change of heart for the channel because generally I'm designing complete and utter garbage, useless stuff, so designing a machine that's actually pretty good at what it's designed to do is a huge change. So let's talk about how we actually did this. The first thing to understand about how you actually farm anything creaking related is to understand how the creaking heart works. It generally has this range in which the creaking can spawn, and if the creaking leaves a 32 block sphere, then it's going to disappear. It also has only certain blocks it can actually spawn on, so bottom slabs where there isn't actually a solid top surface they can't spawn on, and they also can't spawn in water. But they can spawn on a bunch of other normally non-spawnable blocks, including blocks that traditionally would deal damage to things, but since they're invincible, I guess that makes sense. In terms of actual resin generation, resin spawns when you hit the creaking. It has to be a player. It doesn't work if it's like a snowball shot by a snow golem or a skeleton. Believe me, I was going to try and make a snowball machine gun to do this for me. And what essentially does is it propagates outwards from the creaking heart and can attach itself to any block in this sort of body shape, this diamond thing, so it can spawn on all of these things. Notably, it only spreads to other pale logs, so if I hit this creaking a bunch of times, you're going to notice that it's not actually spreading to this stone here. Also, one more thing, I had the game sped up a lot there. This is actual normal speed, and you can actually only hit the creaking and generate resin about once every 5 seconds, and this will come into importance later when we're actually designing a farm. So now let's talk about farm design. We want to put a lot of creakings in a single location so that the player can hit them all really quickly and get a lot of resin to spawn, so we can probably break it with pistons. Now, actually collecting all of these creakings into a location is kind of difficult because they don't spawn on most things, so flushing them immediately with water is not really an option. So I started to develop some really weird setups where I would have them spawn on top of piston heads and then get pushed up into water streams because they actually float when they touch water. And this works more or less pretty effectively, although it has a really small area to spawn on, and also this is incredibly overcomplicated. I eventually realized I was pointlessly overthinking things, and I just went with a simple minecart setup instead, which works a lot better, and it definitely allows you to add a much bigger area. As for actually hitting the creakings, you can just do a sweeping sword, which is really effective at that. And in order to break the resin, I found that the best method is to just simply shuffle the logs on top of the thing back and forth in order to snap them off and drop them into a water stream. In order to make sure that the machine doesn't shuffle while I'm trying to hit the creakings, I basically activate the shuffling whenever this armor stand jumps up and down, and it jumps up and down as a result of me hitting it with a sword. The funny thing about this design though is it's essentially infinitely expandable with almost zero added complexity. You can essentially just expand it, and the only thing that actually changes is maybe installing a slightly faster creaking hopper to handle the extra throughput. But other than that, you can essentially build the same farm and get way more resin than you could possibly ever need in your entire life. I'm gonna be honest, I think Moshe kind of really fumbled the bag in terms of balancing here, because when you start industrially producing resin, it becomes the easiest thing in the world to obtain, but when you actually start trying to obtain it like a normal person out in the wild, it's just incredibly frustrating with the 5-second timer. And the thing is resin is actually pretty useful regardless of whether you like the way it looks or not. The reason this is the case is because resin is actually the first normal building block that can be broken instantly by hand no matter what, making it actually a super useful asset when building scaffolding, for example, so it's actually just generally a really great block to have in survival. If you wanted my actual opinion though of it as an aesthetic block, I'm giving it a solid 6 out of 10 because I just think it's too bright, but I can definitely see it has a lot of applications in very specific builds. Anyways, that's it. Don't check out the rest of my channel if you're looking for incredibly efficient farm design, because essentially my entire body of work is mostly useless garbage. But if you are interested in that sort of branch of redstone, make sure to check out my stuff, subscribe to the channel to see more. Also join the Discord server in the description, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!